Hi, I'm Matthew Newton. I'm the director of the New Hampshire Film and Television Office here in Concord. Well, sort of a roundabout way, I think. Always been into film. I'm a filmmaker at heart myself. Picked up that Super 8 millimeter camera when I was 13 years old and started making movies in the neighborhood. But went to film school here at Keene State in New Hampshire. And upon graduating from that, moved to Los Angeles and worked in the industry out there for a few years. And then made the trip back to the East Coast and was lucky enough to actually see an article in the Portsmouth Herald paper about the new film office director. At that time, it was Jay Brunchick, and I was thinking, boy, it'd be really nice to kind of get in there and be on the East Coast and still have some involvement in film. So pushed and pushed to try to get a job over there. And at the time, that office was over in travel and tourism. So I was lucky enough to be hired at one summer, and it was sort of a 50-50 split. It was half working for travel and tourism and half working with the film office. When that director left, he moved on. There was nobody filling that position, and at that time, Commissioner Van McLeod of the Department of Cultural Resources was interested in moving the office over to his department, and it was done so. But there was nobody really filling the role. And about a year later, I was, I guess you could say, taken from travel and tourism. I was hired on as director of the film office in 2005, and that brings us up to today. Well, it's the mission here is kind of twofold, and traditionally, film offices, I think, are more economic development agencies. If you take a look around the country, you'll find film offices under economic development offices. When it moved over here in cultural resources, Commissioner McLeod had the idea that he wanted it to be more than just economic development. It was about, and I guess that's where the mission splits. That's part of the mission, to bring in production, to get them to spend their dollars here in the state, to be an economic generator for the state. The new part of the mission, the second part of that, is to really put a focus on the in-state industry, to really put a focus on the filmmakers, the craftspeople here in the state, and to build that infrastructure from the ground up. It's been a long process. It's been a slow process, but there is a community coming together now. And once you get that infrastructure really in place, then you can kind of take a look at the bigger picture on how that can have an impact as far as economic development goes. So we focus on both those things. But my role here is to, I do a lot of promotion for filmmakers. If they have a screening coming up, I get the word out to my network. If they're looking for cast and crew, I get that out as well. But I'm here to answer the phones as well. And on a daily basis, filmmakers are calling me saying, hey, I'm looking to film in New Hampshire, and it's my job to try to get them here. Or if they're already planning their shoot here, I act as a liaison between, the film production and anything that they might need. Typically, it's other government agencies, town agencies, where if they need a road closure, I can work with the Department of Transportation or the local government to close a road or a street for that production. So I'm here to kind of help them open the doors and pave the way. I do typically a lot of permitting for state parks. One of the unique things about New Hampshire is that there's no general film permit in the state. So you can actually come into the state and shoot and not have to worry about a permit. Where we do start worrying about permits is if you're shooting on state property. There's a lot of regulations involved. And what I do, I have a great partnership with Parks and Recreation here in the state. If a filmmaker wants to shoot on a state park, it's an easy one-page application and a phone conversation. And I kind of filter it through my network over at Parks, and we get the proper permissions to shoot on those parks. So I'm the liaison in that regard. A couple of reasons. I think the biggest reason right now, and from what I'm hearing from filmmakers looking at New Hampshire, is they've heard word of mouth about the creative atmosphere that's here in New Hampshire. We like to pride ourselves that New Hampshire is very independent film friendly. And I think it shows that between some of the production companies that are already here in the state, like Either Or Films and their film Sensation of Sight, and Mark Dole and Hatchling Studios in Portsmouth, there's this real creative energy that's happening here right now. And filmmakers out of state are starting to hear about that. And it's a place where they can come and they can relax, and make their film and feel like they're a part of something bigger, and it's not just about business. Many times filmmakers will call me and they'll already have a connection to New Hampshire. They either grew up here, or they went to school here, or they vacationed here, or they know somebody here, and they've been here a couple times enough to know that, hey, I really like this environment. And it's not just about the location anymore. It's about the experience. And one of the things we really heard about on Sensation of Sight, which was a huge success in many respects, was the crew, once the film wrapped, they really didn't want to leave. It was like there was this bonding experience, and just being in Peterborough and being around the people, and going to the pub at night after the shoot, and there's this real neat atmosphere. And I think New Hampshire is carving out its little niche in this new Hollywood New England, this Hollywood East, and I think it's a nice connection, because while we talk about the industry on the whole, and we talk about a Hollywood New England, I think all the sectors of that industry really need to be represented, and it's not just about studio films, although that's great, and we want to see more of that here. But to have such a focus on independent film and having an environment where independent filmmakers can come, I think is only a nice partnership in all that's going on in New England. I really do. Well, it's an interesting discussion, and it's a discussion that's been going on for quite some time now, and will continue to go on. New Hampshire has had a very unique approach to it, and I think it goes hand in hand to what New Hampshire is really all about, is that we kind of do our own thing, and it's a live free or die mentality. So we're not very quick to jump on the bandwagon like some other states are. What's happening in Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut with their tax credits is just fantastic, because having it such a tight New England region, projects come into Massachusetts, and there's always New Hampshire folks working on those projects. So as long as those folks are working, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with that. But it's still, it's still said that New Hampshire is one of 7 states that doesn't have a tax credit. Are there other benefits? I think so. I would argue, I would pose that maybe it's generally cheaper to shoot in New Hampshire. I've had filmmakers come to me looking for airports, for example, and they've sought out shooting at Logan. And from what I hear, it's very expensive to shoot at Logan, when they can cheat it at an airport like Manchester Boston Regional, at little to no cost. And the management down there is very open to having filmmaking down there. It's a little bit easier access, I think. But so there are benefits like that. There's sort of an individual attention that we give to independent filmmakers, which I'm hearing is sort of a roundabout benefit. It's, time is money, and if you're waiting around for the help, if you're waiting around for the tax credits, you're not behind the camera. And so I think some filmmakers are starting to move up this way, where they feel they can get that individual attention. It's our no tax structure, which is very unique in one respect, but it complicates the whole tax credit issue. I mean, when you have no taxes to begin with, you got to find a way to justify, why the state is spending dollars subsidizing the film industry. Massachusetts has found a way to do it. Connecticut and Rhode Island have found ways to do it. New Hampshire hasn't yet. And I've had a lot of conversation with legislative partners across the street here about how do we explore this, and there is a lot of talk about it right now. I know a couple representatives and senators who have been having conversations with filmmakers about this, and we're just taking it a little slower, a little cautious, and I'm monitoring it all the time, what's happening in different states. There are pluses and minuses to having these tax credits, and I think it's great for New England. I love what's happening, but I think the other states and folks in those states need to understand that we're New Hampshire, and we need to find the right political and fiscal climate for that sort of thing. So it's something we're exploring. Now, along the same line, we're taking a look at alternative incentives. Are there public-private ventures that we can, partnerships that we can forge that can create some sort of funding? There's been a lot of confusion about where New Hampshire stands on the tax credits, and I just want to tell you and the folks out there that if you're a filmmaker and if you really want to see tax credits come to New Hampshire, I would suggest that you contact your legislators. And there's only so much that the film office can do right now to promote that, but we have to play it politically. But the filmmakers out there have the real voice, and I would encourage them. And filmmakers have already started to contact their senators, contact the legislators, and say, look, see what's going around in New England, and we'd like to see something, if anything, come to New Hampshire. It does work. There's been huge success in our neighboring states with tax credits, and I think the same would happen here on some level. We're just playing it cautiously, and we're watching things and taking it slow and making sure that whatever program we do put into place is right for New Hampshire, because we don't want to put something in that will just get nixed down the road and could possibly cause harm to the film office down the road. We want to create a lasting infrastructure, a lasting program, and a lasting film office. So again, I would encourage filmmakers, contact your government and let them know that you're a part of the industry, and let them know that the tax credits are important to you. So there's a lot of discussion to be had, and it's a very complicated issue. And I'm not really an economist, so I can't really weigh in on the dollar figures and all that. But I do know that we have lost production to states with tax credits. There have been productions that have been very interested in shooting in New Hampshire and have geared up to shoot in New Hampshire, and then at the very last minute have been swayed by tax credits for one reason or another, and that's fine. And what I tell some filmmakers now is there's a good thing to this tax credit in Massachusetts, where you can still shoot a scene or two in New Hampshire. You can get those White Mountains if that's what you're looking for, and still take advantage of the tax credit in Massachusetts. So I'm getting those calls now, and it's like, I'm coming to Massachusetts, we're shooting here, but we have this one scene that we want to shoot in, north of Massachusetts, so how can you help us out? So it's a very fluid thing right now, and if the studio comes about in Plymouth, I just think it's going to be huge for us, and I'm really looking forward to that. But it's a blessing and a curse in a way, because you get the folks who call us saying, I'm interested in New Hampshire, and then those are the folks that really are interested. But then you get the others who say, I'm interested in shooting in New Hampshire, what are your tax credits? And then I have to go into my long spiel about how we don't have them and what benefits we do have. It's a lot like used car shopping nowadays. People are just calling you up and saying, what do you got? Sorry, you don't match Michigan's credit. I'll see you later. But it hasn't stopped the phone from ringing from the folks that are really interested in New Hampshire. And I think it goes to show that there are still filmmakers out there who are thinking about authenticity. They're thinking about the location and the visual look of their film, and not so much the money end of it. Yeah, there were a couple that really stood out. One of course, was Mystery Team, which was a hilarious comedy by Dan Eckman and the folks at Derrick Comedy, which was shot in New Hampshire about a year ago in the Manchester area. So that was a lot of fun to see, and it's great to see that they've gotten picked up for distribution by Roadside Attractions. The other film that really stuck out was a locally produced documentary called Shooting Beauty, by George Cachadorian on the Seacoast and his wife. Just a very moving documentary. And New Hampshire Day is always fun, the first day of the festival. That Thursday is always fun because you get to see a lot of New Hampshire-made product and shorts. And, we got to finally see Crooked Lane short by Chase Bailey, which was shot on the Seacoast this summer. So it's really fun to be a part of the process of all of these films during production, and then to finally get a chance to sit down with an audience and see what's been produced. Yeah, I think I would like to see, and more are doing this, I would like to see more filmmakers sort of bridge their creative approach to filmmaking to a professional approach. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of filmmakers out there still who are sort of guerrilla filmmaking and sort of running and gunning, and which is good. But if you involve the help of me or another film office in your project, there are doors that can be opened, and there are procedures that can happen that can smooth things out for you, you know. Sometimes, honestly, I do tell filmmakers that whatever the situation might be, sometimes it's better to beg for forgiveness and ask for permission. And there are cases where that definitely applies. But I think that particularly film students need to understand that there's a professional approach to filmmaking as well, and that you're not only creating a film, but you're creating something that's representing you. And content aside, you know, how you go and get that image is just as important as the image itself. You know, you don't want to do something that can close the door on your production and productions behind you is the important thing. You don't want to do something where when the next independent filmmaker comes along, it's that much harder, because this independent film industry, it's hard enough. It's really hard enough. And there are instances where somebody will go into a town and just completely disrupt the town, and then the town will never want to work with another production again. So there are things that we can do to help that process. There are conversations that can be had, doors that can be opened, and really sometimes it just takes a phone call. You know, if a filmmaker's sort of getting a runaround from somebody to secure a location, you know, have them call the film office and say, hey, look, you want to talk to Matt at the film office, he knows about our project. And they do. They call me and they say, hey, do you know about this project? And I'll say, yeah, they've contacted me, they're trying to be professional about it. Get insurance. That's number two. That's my number one. Before I'll even help any production, particularly independent films, I'll ask them, well, do you have insurance coverage? And if they say no, I'll say, look, I'll try to give you some leads to some things, but I can't help you secure locations because I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to open doors for you, and then should something happen, you're not covered. So you need to think about how you're covered as a business, as a professional, and how you go through the proper channels. So those are the two pieces of advice that I would give filmmakers today. I think the film office has grown substantially since I stepped in, and I certainly don't want to take all the credit for that, because there's been a number of folks in New Hampshire's film industry that have really stepped up and been a part of what's happening here in the state. We have a 15-member film commission advisory board. It's really not a voting board. They don't really direct what the film office does, but it's an opportunity for us to get a little insight from the industry and allow us to keep everybody informed on what's happening here. So if I do need to call DOT is always at the table, and they know the process. But there are 5 members of the industry that are appointed to this commission as well that provide me with a little insight with what's happening on the outside. And there's just constant conversation, and it's grown significantly, I think. You know, back then Jay did a great job, and there were projects coming in, but at that time there were no tax credits yet, so it was a good time. It was about location, and they were calling specifically about New Hampshire because it was New Hampshire. Now I think I have to wrestle with this little marketing side of things. You know, how do you market a state that's up against some very aggressive incentives in other states? And I think going at the independent route specifically is the way to go right now. The rest of it will kind of feed into that. But yeah, we've done improvements on the website. We've created a new production directory, which now has over like 400 listings in there. 100 of them are production companies, you know, which is great. We've got a new location library online. We use a service called Reel Scout, REEL Scout. it's just the education and outreach. We do quarterly roundtables. We do screenplay readings. We did one last night at Red River Theaters where we give a chance for the writer to have their work read by a cast, sitting in a nice intimate setting. And it was a great time last night. So we're doing all these new partnerships, and I spoke yesterday with a group up in the Lakes region about the film office, and I continue to speak with chambers of commerce and different associations to kind of get them on board. So when I need to make a phone call and say, hey, I'm looking for this, that, or any other thing, they'll be well versed in what's going on here in the state. So I think that's just going to continue to grow. But the word that keeps popping into my head is community, and I think that's one of the biggest things that has happened over the last 4 years, is that there's this real sense of community and partnership between filmmakers, and I think we've come a long way. But the work has definitely just begun. Some of our neighboring states are just further along in the process. They've got a bigger crew base, and the credits have certainly helped and establish that infrastructure, which is fantastic. It works, but we're sort of a couple rungs down on the ladder, I think, and we're making the climb up, and we're really focusing on building up the locations database and getting in touch with all the folks around the state. There's so many people in the North Country that I haven't really connected with on a one-on-one basis yet. So we're still building that infrastructure, and we've got a ways to go, but we've definitely come a long way. Start with the website. The Film Office can be found at www.nh.gov/film. From there, you can go everywhere that we do, all the different things that we do. Social media, we're getting into that now. That's been a new technology for us over the last few years. Twitter, you'll find us at NH Film Office. You'll find us NH Film Office on Facebook. So we're covering the grounds that the filmmakers are using right now. So these are the tools that filmmakers are using, so we got to be a part of that as well. But yes, the website, it'll give you all the information about, you can go to our blog for casting notices, that sort of thing, our next roundtables and other Film Office events. So I would start there. And if you want to contact me via email, you can do so easily enough at film@nh.gov.